If she doesn't see your value, stop giving her attention. Why are you still holding on to someone who let go of you long ago? She stopped choosing you, stopped caring how you felt. She sees your messages and ignores them. She hears your words and treats them like noise. You gave her love. She gave you distance. You gave her your time. She gave you silence. And you're still hoping she'll come back. Comment, no more games. If you're finally done waiting for someone who already moved on. Subscribe to this channel if you believe every man deserves to hear this truth. By subscribing, you help spread wisdom men are starving for. Number 1. Cut off emotional triggers. You say you want to move on, you tell yourself you're done, but your actions tell a different story. You still scroll through her photos like she's the answer. You still type messages you never send. You still sit with your phone waiting for a text that will never come, because deep down you're not ready to face the truth that she already let go of you emotionally long before the relationship ever ended, and now you're left in the aftermath, holding on to memories that only hurt you more every time you replay them in your head. The laughs, the texts, the way she used to look at you like you mattered. It's all become a weapon against your progress. And the worst part is, you know it. You know the damage you're causing yourself. You know that keeping that playlist is like playing your own funeral song every time you hit play. That every old message you reread is just a reminder that the man you were back then is being buried under the emotional weight of a woman who doesn't care that you're suffering right now. She's not thinking about how you're handling the silence, because the silence is her answer, and yet you sit there overanalyzing every detail, hoping maybe she's just taking time, or maybe she's figuring things out, or maybe she still loves you and doesn't know how to say it. But the truth is, men don't get clarity from maybe. We don't find peace in what-ifs. We earn respect through action, and you've been sitting in inaction, hoping the universe will do for you what you're afraid to do for yourself, which is to make a clean break, to cut the emotional veins that are still feeding her memory with life inside your mind. But healing doesn't come by chance. It comes by choice, and the first choice you have to make is to remove everything that makes you relive her, from the conversations you have with friends that always circle back to her name, to the photos you secretly keep in hidden albums, to the accounts you visit, hoping to see her looking sad, or posting something that feels like a message to you. But all of that is the illusion you cling to, because you haven't yet learned to live without the idea of her, not even her, just the idea of her, the version you painted so perfectly in your mind, the fantasy where she's the only one who saw you, loved you, made you feel alive. And the hardest pill you'll swallow in this journey is realizing she wasn't that woman anymore, and maybe never truly was. Maybe she was only that version of herself, because you were trying so hard to believe in something deeper. But now that the act has dropped and the emotions are cold, your job is to preserve your sanity by protecting your peace. And that starts by purging your environment of her presence. Because every trace you allow to remain is an open door to pain and confusion and hope. And hope is the biggest lie you tell yourself when the truth is right in front of you, that she doesn't care, that she moved on, that she doesn't check your profile, doesn't replay your messages, doesn't wonder how you're holding up. And as painful as that is to admit, it is also your greatest gift, because now you have nothing left to lose, nothing left to wait for. And in that space, you finally have the freedom to build yourself without attachment, without begging the past to come back in a future where it no longer belongs. And that's when you start living like a man who values his time, like a man who protects his thoughts, like a man who doesn't let a woman who showed him her worst still hold space in his head, like she earned a right to live there. Because when she chose herself over you, you were given the chance to choose you. And the man who chooses himself fully never loses again. Not because pain disappears, but because he stops giving it control. He stops giving ghosts permission to haunt him. He stops feeding the fire that only burns him. and he starts rising from the ashes not to prove something to her, but because the lesson itself was the fire he needed to become unbreakable. And the more you strip her from your world, the clearer your mind gets, the stronger your will becomes. The more obvious it is that peace doesn't live in yesterday, it lives in the present. And you will never have peace if you let your thoughts get hijacked by old love stories that no longer serve your growth. And if you don't want to stay stuck in emotional limbo, you have to build the discipline to walk away mentally before you walk away physically. And that starts today by clearing your environment, your habits, and your patterns of everything that gives her space in your life. Because love isn't loyalty to pain. Love is choosing truth, even when it hurts. And if the truth is she let you go, then your healing begins by letting her go too. Not with anger, but with clarity. Not with noise, but with certainty. And if you can do that, if you can be man enough to remove every trigger that keeps you tied to a love that's already dead, then you will be man enough to build a future that makes that old version of you unrecognizable. And when that mental clarity finally becomes your new reality, there's no turning back, because now the only thing left is to feed that growth with tools that go even deeper. And that's why the Stoic Relationship Blueprint exists. Not just a book, but a manual for men who are ready to transform silently, strategically, permanently, filled with timeless Stoic principles that don't just sound good, they work instantly. And now it's available in audiobook format, so you can listen while walking, training, jogging, clearing your head, and stacking wisdom while stacking discipline. And this isn't a book you read once and forget. It's one you own for life, one you return to when clarity fades, when pain creeps back, when the world gets loud and your mind needs direction. And it's already helped thousands of men walk away from confusion and step into clarity, confidence, and emotional control. And now it's your turn, because real growth doesn't ask permission. It just requires the right knowledge at the right time, and that time is now. Check the link in the comments, get your copy, listen while you build. Number 2. Stop looking for signs. You keep looking for signs that she still loves you, because you're not ready to face the reality that she doesn't, that she chose herself a long time ago, and now you're clinging to the fragments of a woman who once gave you attention but no longer gives you intention. You replay the conversations and read between the lines of her one-word replies like they're encrypted messages of hope, when really they're nothing more than polite indifference, if not manipulation, because she knows you're still checking, and she doesn't have to do anything anymore to keep you hooked. She doesn't have to try, doesn't have to show up, doesn't have to invest. All she has to do is exist, and you do the rest. You fill in the gaps with dreams. You overanalyze every emoji. You scroll back to posts from months ago, trying to remember what went wrong. But deep down, you know exactly when it went wrong. It went wrong the moment you started chasing the woman she used to be, instead of seeing the woman she's showing you now. And the man who keeps looking for signs is the man who refuses to read the one message that matters, her actions. Because no woman who truly values you ever makes you feel invisible, ever makes you doubt your worth, ever puts you on hold while she explores other options, and keeps you as a backup just in case her plan B fails. Yet you stay hoping the silence means she's confused, that she's healing, that she'll come back once she figures things out. But all of that is an illusion, and the longer you hold on to the illusion, the more you delay your own transformation. Because transformation starts with truth, and the truth is, she stopped seeing you as her man long before you noticed, and now every time you ignore that truth, you sacrifice your self-respect on the altar of maybe. Maybe she still cares. Maybe she's waiting for me to prove something. Maybe she's testing me. And you don't realize that every maybe is another day wasted in emotional limbo while she lives her life, posts her selfies, enjoys her weekends, talks to other men, all while you wait for the universe to give you a sign to let go. But the sign has already come in the form of her absence, her inconsistency, her silence, and the only reason you don't accept it is because the pain of facing the truth seems more unbearable than the comfort of living in denial. But denial is decay, and it eats at you slowly. One ignored call at a time, one passive-aggressive comment at a time, one vague message at a time, until you're a shell of the man you were before you met her. And if you don't stop now, if you don't break the cycle, you'll keep giving your energy to a woman who's no longer emotionally present and who doesn't even respect the effort you're giving, because women don't value desperation. They don't value men who seek validation from rejection. They respect men who know when to walk away, who know when enough is enough, who don't need closure because they close the door themselves and lock it from the inside. And that's who you need to become. The man who doesn't beg for clarity from someone who already made her intentions clear by removing herself from your life piece by piece. So stop asking if she still loves you. Stop hoping for breadcrumbs of attention. Stop thinking you need her to validate your worth. You don't. You never did. And the moment you stop looking for signs and start focusing on facts is the moment you reclaim your power, because facts don't lie. And the fact is, she left mentally. She distanced herself emotionally, and she's not confused. She's gone. And you need to be honest with yourself enough to admit that holding on to someone who's letting you go is not loyalty. It's self-sabotage. And the man who can look himself in the mirror and say, "I saw the signs, I ignored them, but I'm done now," is the man who will rise from this and never fall for the same illusion again, because next time you'll trust your gut, not her words. You'll respect your standards, not her excuses, and you'll walk away the moment your peace starts to feel expensive. And the man who values peace over potential is the man who wins long-term, because he understands that potential means nothing without consistency, that charm without effort is manipulation, and that attention without investment is distraction. So if you want to stop hurting, stop looking for signs, and start becoming the sign. Become the man who doesn't chase vague energy, who doesn't respond to inconsistency, who doesn't need to be told twice when a woman stops showing up. And from this day forward, when you catch yourself wondering what she meant by that last message, or why she stopped texting, or whether she still cares, answer with action, not emotion. Choose discipline, choose detachment, choose dignity, because the only way you rise is when you stop falling for the same trap wrapped in false hope and romantic delusion. And once you stop waiting for a sign, you'll realize that you were the signal all along. You just forgot your own frequency chasing someone who never tuned in. Number 3. Set mental boundaries. Everything falls apart the moment thoughts go unchecked, because no matter how strong the body is or how disciplined the routine may appear, if the mind stays tied to a woman who treats you like an afterthought, every step forward gets pulled back by your own inner dialogue, a dialogue that repeats questions she never answered, plays back moments she never apologized for, and imagines scenarios where she finally wakes up and sees your worth. But that mindset is the trap, because until the mind is trained to protect itself from emotional self-harm, no amount of external action will bring real peace. And most stay stuck in cycles, not because they don't know what to do, but because they haven't set the rule that says, access to my thoughts must be earned. And that rule has to be non-negotiable, especially with a woman who's already proven that your peace is not her priority, because mental boundaries aren't just about blocking a number or deleting a contact. They're about deleting the space she takes up in your imagination, where she still gets the best of your emotional energy without even being present. And that's the most dangerous place to be in, giving a woman you no longer trust the ability to shape your mood, to influence your focus, to interrupt your growth with just a memory. And this happens every time a man allows his mind to wander unchecked, thinking about her with romantic bias, filtering out the disrespect, the neglect, the passive-aggressive silence, and only remembering the laughs, the intimacy, the highlight reel. But that's not truth. That's self-deception. And self-deception is the root of weakness, because if the mind is split between reality and fantasy, it can never commit to healing. And without healing, everything else suffers. Your work, your fitness, your goals, your confidence. All of it gets compromised because one part of your brain is still negotiating with a version of her that doesn't exist anymore, and setting mental boundaries means ending the negotiation. It means locking that door mentally and refusing to revisit it every time loneliness creeps in. It means not allowing boredom to trigger a scroll through old messages, not letting a sad song become a gateway to reminiscing about a relationship that already ended in every way except your thoughts. And that's the painful part most avoid. The discipline to stop revisiting pain disguised as nostalgia. And it requires a mindset that values self-respect over emotional comfort. Because setting mental boundaries isn't comfortable. It's a fight against habit, against dopamine addiction, against the old identity that was dependent on her approval. But the man who rewrites that identity in solitude becomes immune to manipulation, immune to validation addiction, and he sees clearly that no woman, no matter how beautiful or sweet she once seemed, is worth compromising your clarity for, because clarity is the highest form of power, and when that clarity is protected by boundaries, you stop reacting to the bait, you stop trying to decode her silence, you stop chasing closure that will never come, because closure is what you give yourself when you finally accept that not every chapter deserves a proper ending. Some stories end abruptly, some people leave without explanation, and your peace can't be held hostage by questions you'll never get answers to. So mental boundaries mean drawing the line not just in conversation, but in thought. It means saying no to the emotional replay that keeps your nervous system in survival mode, and choosing instead to build new thought loops, new neural patterns that reinforce strength, that reinforce detachment, that remind you every day that your worth is not tied to how she treated you, but to how you responded to it. Because men who reclaim their mind, reclaim their life, and every minute spent reimagining a dead relationship is a minute stolen from the man you could be, the life you could build, the future waiting to be claimed. And she doesn't deserve that much power, especially after showing you that she could ignore your pain without guilt, that she could disrespect your presence without apology. And mental boundaries are how you take that power back, not through rage, not through retaliation, but through refusal. Refusal to let her live in your mind when she doesn't even value your presence in her world anymore. And once that refusal becomes consistent, once the mind is guarded like a fortress, everything changes. Your decisions sharpen, your purpose intensifies, and your emotional resilience becomes untouchable, not because you don't feel, but because you've mastered where to place those feelings, and more importantly, where not to. Number 4. Step into a higher version of you. Nothing changes until the decision is made to stop waiting for permission to grow and start becoming someone that no longer craves the past. Because the version that tolerated disrespect, begged for clarity, stayed silent in discomfort, and sacrificed peace for attention, doesn't deserve to follow into the future that's waiting to be built. And every second spent looking backward is another second that delays the arrival of the man who walks with purpose, speaks with clarity, and acts with intent. Not because pain disappeared, but because it was used as fuel, because the heartbreak that once weakened becomes the pressure that forges new focus, new discipline, and new standards. And stepping into that higher version means leaving behind the excuses, the distractions, the false narratives that say healing takes years, when in reality, healing begins the moment excuses end, when the man staring into space wondering what went wrong finally stops wondering and starts building. Because while she's out living her life, making new memories, and moving forward without hesitation, there's no glory in sitting in emotional quicksand, hoping one day she sees your worth while you remain the same man she walked away from. And stepping into the next level requires more than just desire. It demands execution. It demands a relentless obsession with becoming undeniable, not to prove her wrong, not to get her back, but because staying the same is no longer an option, because playing small to keep someone comfortable has already cost too much, and silence didn't protect you. Overgiving didn't earn you loyalty. Staying present didn't make you seen. So now the only direction is forward, and the upgrade begins with the body. Because when the body strengthens, the mind sharpens, and when the body weakens, the mind justifies weakness. So the gym isn't optional, it's sacred ground, where the emotional pain gets transformed into power, where the man that once craved her attention now craves results, and the diet is no longer about taste, it's about control, because every disciplined meal is a statement that says, I choose health over habit, and from there the habits start stacking. The early mornings become non-negotiable, the distractions get cut, the phone stops being a leash to her world, and the business plan you wrote months ago but never started suddenly gets executed step by step, because purpose kills obsession, and once the path becomes clear, the past loses its pull, and the version that used to chase texts now chases progress, reads books instead of rereading messages, sets goals instead of waiting for closure, and when temptation to relapse hits, because it always does, the response isn't weakness, it's reflection, a brutal, honest review of the facts. She didn't value your presence, she didn't respect your effort, and nothing about you begging, shrinking, or waiting would have changed that. Because value never comes from submission, it comes from self-respect. And the higher version lives by that law, not emotion. So he no longer argues with reality, no longer tries to be understood by someone who benefits from misunderstanding him, no longer breaks his own rules to accommodate a woman who broke his heart without apology. And instead of overthinking, he over-executes. And instead of wishing she came back, he becomes someone who would never entertain her again if she did. And that switch flips the entire story, because now she no longer holds the frame, no longer determines his mood, no longer has access to the version of him who needed her validation to feel complete. And that's when the freedom hits. Not because she changed, but because he did. Because the higher version doesn't operate from pain, he operates from truth. And the truth is this: she walked away, and it hurt. But now it's your time to walk forward. And the man who walks forward without hesitation is the man who reclaims everything he thought he lost. And more, because the heartbreak wasn't the ending, it was the doorway. And the pain wasn't punishment, it was permission. And now every rep, every disciplined hour, every risk taken, every level unlocked, is a reminder that she didn't break him. She built the version of him that couldn't exist while he was trying to keep her. And that's why the higher version never looks back. Because the man he's becoming demands all of him. And there's no room for pieces of a woman who didn't value the whole. Number 5. Choose your peace over her. No relationship is worth trading peace for confusion, yet most stay because they confuse love with emotional survival, thinking if they hold on long enough she'll go back to who she was in the beginning. But the truth is, that version of her was either temporary or never real. And now every interaction is filled with tension, silence, disrespect, or indifference that slowly eats away at sanity. And still the attachment remains, not because it makes sense, but because it's familiar. And familiarity is the trap that keeps men stuck in relationships that ended long ago emotionally, even if the titles remained the same. And choosing peace over her doesn't mean there's no love left. It means the love that remains is no longer healthy, it's no longer mutual, it's no longer inspiring growth, and staying with someone who no longer adds value becomes a form of self-punishment, especially when it's based on who she was, not who she is now. And peace begins where fantasy ends, where expectations collapse, where reality is seen clearly without emotion distorting it. And that clarity is what most avoid because it demands uncomfortable action. It demands cutting ties, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And that requires the kind of detachment that isn't built overnight. It's built moment by moment, by refusing to chase what pulls you away from yourself. And choosing peace over her looks like turning your phone off instead of sending another message she won't reply to. It looks like deleting old photos instead of revisiting memories she doesn't even remember. It looks like going to the gym when the sadness hits, writing goals instead of texts, showing up for yourself when she no longer shows up for you. And this level of peace isn't handed to anyone. It's earned through silence, through reflection, through the brutal process of admitting that she no longer sees you, that she doesn't value your presence. And it's not about blaming her. It's about refusing to betray yourself any longer by begging for scraps of attention from someone who used to give you everything without asking. And the truth is, the longer you stay in a situation where peace is absent, the more you normalize dysfunction. You begin to confuse silence for space, neglect for independence, and rejection for challenge. But none of that is healthy, and peace doesn't feel like overthinking every word, doubting every interaction, waiting for her to choose you again. Peace feels like knowing exactly where you stand, waking up without dread, living without emotional fatigue. And when that becomes more important than holding on to her, that's when the shift happens. Not when she changes, not when she apologizes, but when the vision for your life becomes clearer than your desire for her attention. And in that moment, your standard rises permanently, not just for women, but for everything in life. Because once peace is tasted, it's never traded again, not for sex, not for history, not for potential, because peace becomes the new foundation for relationships, for purpose, for growth. And it becomes obvious that no woman who disturbs that peace is worth holding on to, even if she once made you feel alive, because the man you're becoming doesn't need someone to validate his value. He creates it daily in how he thinks, acts, lives, and choosing peace over her means choosing a life where your mind is calm, your heart is stable, your mission is clear, and your time is respected. And any woman who wants access to that has to match that energy or be removed, not because of anger, but because peace has no space for confusion, and peace never coexists with chaos, and the one who chooses peace first always wins long term, because that peace becomes the soil where greatness grows. Number 6. Rebuild your identity. Every relationship you lose is an opportunity to find who you were before you started compromising your standards to keep someone who no longer respected them. And identity isn't something that survives without effort. It deteriorates slowly with every silent compromise, every tolerated disrespect, every time the message you want to send stays unsent because you're afraid it might upset her. And that fear of upsetting her is exactly what erodes your character, because a man who lives in fear of someone else's emotional reaction will always lose his own voice in the process. And rebuilding identity starts with recognizing how much of your self-worth was tied to her validation, how much of your routine revolved around her needs, how much of your vision was shaped by what she approved of. And now that she's gone, there's a vacuum. But that vacuum isn't a loss, it's a blank canvas, and what gets painted next defines the next era of your life. Because identity is never static, it's built and rebuilt through seasons. And this season is about becoming someone who doesn't need to be loved to feel valuable, someone who knows that respect is non-negotiable, someone who doesn't shrink in discomfort but grows through it. And that man doesn't exist until the old version dies. The version that over-explained, overgave, overlooked red flags, overextended his energy, trying to keep a relationship alive that was only alive because he was carrying both roles. And now that he's done carrying, the identity rebuild begins with silence. Not silence toward her, but silence within, where the noise stops, the blame ends, and the clarity begins. Where every morning becomes a chance to prove to yourself that she wasn't the prize. You were, and the more you detach from the version of yourself that needed her, the more space is created to become someone you would admire, someone who doesn't beg for validation, but earns it through discipline, someone who doesn't chase emotions but builds values, someone who can walk away from what doesn't serve his purpose without losing sleep. And this identity isn't built by motivation. It's built by habit, by structure, by committing to routines that don't rely on how you feel, but on who you want to be. And that's why the gym matters. That's why the discipline to wake up early, eat clean, move with purpose matters, because those habits are the bricks that rebuild what her absence left behind. And each brick laid is a moment of power reclaimed. And while she may never see it, while she may never apologize, that doesn't matter, because the rebuild isn't for her. It's for the man who wakes up every day with a fire that doesn't depend on anyone else lighting it, and that man becomes untouchable. Not because he's numb, but because he's clear, and clarity is the highest form of confidence, and the identity he creates is one that never again waits for someone to choose him, because he already chose himself. And now his standard isn't how good she looks, how fun she is, or how much history they have. His standard is how well she aligns with his peace, his vision, his values, and if she can't respect that, she doesn't get access to it, and that filter protects his identity from being compromised ever again. The truth is, most men will stay stuck, scrolling, simping, shrinking, while the world cheers them on for being emotionally available to women who would drop them without a second thought. But not you, not anymore, because if you've made it this far, that means something inside you is done chasing validation, done being the man who waits to be chosen. And if you're ready to take back your power with timeless truths that society hopes you never learn, then comment, "I choose myself," hit like, and subscribe to help another man escape the trap before it ruins him too. Because the Stoic relationship blueprint isn't just a book. It's a complete guide to becoming untouchable, filled with Stoic principles that will rewire your mind, transform your focus, and make you immune to emotional manipulation. And now you can listen to the audiobook version while walking, working out, or building the new you. And it's linked in the comments. Your peace, your clarity, your evolution is one decision away.